Hey folks. So, historically speaking, the likelihood of an absolute dictator taking power by force in your local town is mostly decided by the general happiness of the people in said town. If everything's great, nobody's going to risk everything by throwing their support behind some guy and his new ideas. But if everything's unstable and generally bad, then this becomes a more appealing idea. Take Athens in the 7th century BCE. Athens had no official laws or constitution, so everything was just decided by a few noble families, and the regular people just had to deal with that. Legal disputes between the poor were almost always solved by a who can pay the bigger bribe to the aristocratic judge competition. When the aristocrats themselves argued about anything, it was mostly solved by violence between the families. On top of this, there was massive wealth inequality. Most people in these days were just farmers with enough land to make a living for themselves and their families. But the population was increasing and land inherited was distributed according to bribes, not fairness or common sense or any legal route. The average bloke was regularly forced to sell his family into slavery just to ensure their survival. Those who didn't become slaves became indebted to the rich, who forced them to work their large estates for a tax of 1/6 of their produce. This would mean that they worked to the profit of the landowner whilst never making enough money to buy themselves out of servitude. Enter Cylon. This is Cylon. In 640 BCE, he won the Olympic Games and became a big celebrity. Everyone agreed he was just the best guy and he was loving all the attention. Until one day, the tyrant of Megara, a fellow called Theagenes, came to visit Cylon. They talked about how all the cool Greek city-states were developing into tyrannies, a new form of government in which the feuding aristocrats crushed all of their rivals and became sole autocrat of their city. This had worked out great for Theagenes, who told Cylon that if he wanted to make himself tyrant of Athens, Theagenes would support him, and together they could rule this bit. To secure this alliance, Theagenes offered his daughter to Cylon in marriage, but Cylon was not yet fully convinced. Becoming tyrant was dangerous, and all those feuding aristocrats could quickly turn their attention on him. So he goes to the oracle at Delphi to get his tea leaves read. The priestess, who the Greeks genuinely believed was in direct contact with the god Apollo, who apparently spent his time cryptically telling mortals the future, told Cylon that if he seized power in Athens during the festival of Zeus, he would be successful. Everyone would be too busy having fun to notice him seizing control. Cylon was very enthusiastic about this idea. After all, the year was 632 BCE, and the Olympic Games were fast approaching. Bear in mind, the Olympics were a religious occasion dedicated to Zeus. So having decided that he would launch a coup for power in Athens, Cylon waits for the Olympic Games to start. While everyone is distracted, he and his followers march to the top of the Acropolis, the largest hill in Athens, and once there, declare that Cylon is now leader of the city. The people of Athens, however, rich and poor alike, put aside their differences and come to the unanimous conclusion that no one wants Cylon in charge. They surround and besiege him and his followers on the hill. Looking to his supporters, who had put their faith in him and followed him, Cylon nobly does the only thing he knows he can do in this situation, and runs away. Nobody knows how, only that he did. I mean, he was an Olympian at one point, so maybe he just ran away and no one could catch him, or just shot-putted himself out of our narrative. Either way, he's left Athens and being historically significant as a figure behind for good. His supporters, however, are still very much surrounded. Looking now to their own safety, they fled to the nearby temple of Athena. You see, the Greeks had this rule about killing somebody inside a god or goddess's official sanctuary, be seen as a great sacrilege, so the temple was seen by the failing revolutionaries as somewhere violence would never be used against them out of fear for Athena's wrath. However, the negotiators rock up, telling those taking refuge that if they come out to stand trial legally, their lives will definitely be spared. So two stories exist regarding the following. One story goes that Cylon's followers simply left the temple, trusting in the deal that they had made. Another later version tells us how they tied a rope to the statue of Athena in the temple and left the sanctuary holding this rope. The rope then supposedly snaps, symbolically showing the goddess renouncing her protection of Cylon's supporters. Either way, what happens next has a lot to do with this guy, Megacles. Megacles is from the Alcmaeonid family, which is one of the most ancient and revered bloodlines amongst the Athenian aristocracy. He is also one of the leaders of the force besieging the supporters of Cylon. Despite promising them safe passage upon their surrender, he orders them all killed as soon as he can. like all still chained together, executed with the protests about the goddess's protection, still on their lips, just all killed. Some people reckon they even found the mass grave of the massacre back in 2016. Needless to say, this caused big controversy in Athens. Megacles had enough enemies as was, being the leader of a powerful noble family. The city eventually gangs up on him and sends him into exile. They actually send his whole family into exile as well, like even the bones of their dead relatives are being sent into exile. And that's Cylon's rebellion. Although it was unsuccessful, it did make the Athenians pause and wonder whether or not re-evaluating how they govern their city might not be a bad idea. In just over a century, one of Megacles' descendants, having triumphantly returned from exile, would even suggest a radical new constitution, in which citizens use the power of one equal vote to make decisions. But that's all far in the future for now, and far from the mind of Cylon, who never bothered trying to do anything worth mentioning again. I guess the moral of the story is if some lady claiming to be in contact with a god tells you to overthrow your government, maybe think a little bit about it before just going for it.